Alright, so I had a little bit of time to dry. You can see I'm going to have to put another coat on. Another light coat should do it. So this is with one coat. So let's put it back on the ship, and I'll show you guys to see if it's the bleed through is getting to be a little more minimal. Let's put the lights on. You can see it is getting better. You can see a little bit along the edges where the railings are going to be, but it is getting better. So I'll give it another light coat, because you don't want to give it a whole bunch of coats all at once and it'll be dripping all over the place and it just won't be good. So a lot of thin coats, that's the best bet. All right, so I had some time to dry, and I fit it back in position. And you can see when I light up, it's nice and solid. We don't want the light bleeding through, and this little areas over here, don't worry, we're going to cover that. Now the United States, and we're going to put putty in there, so when it's glued on, so don't worry too much about that. Plus, when we glue it and clamp it down, a lot of that will fill. Then when it comes to the United States, her decks were actually green. And you can see, I'm going to put up a pretty cool picture of the bow. And the picture that I'm putting up was actually during her sea trials. And she was able to go 20 knots in reverse. Think about it, something this big. I think it's around 20 knots. Think about it, the Titanic's top speed was around 20 knots going forward. And the United States was able to do 20 knots in reverse. Just think of that for a minute. This is an amazing ship. You can see some of the detail that's on here. Now, because you can see the winches, and you can see the little life rafts that they had. This area here. What I'm thinking of using is, let me put this back on here for a moment. I'm thinking of using the testers, the green, which is pretty cool, because I was thinking when I first got the set, I'm like, well, when am I ever going to use this color on? And it just happens to be, to the naked eye anyway, it looks like the perfect shade of green for her decks. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to use the small brush, the small detail brush, and I'm going to use my goggles with the magnification. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to paint in the deck of the SS United States. All right, let's go ahead and we'll get the deck painted. Okay, so I just gave it a coat. This is the first coat that I gave it. And Alan, my paintbrush skills are not as good as yours. So it's kind of messy. Guys, I'm so used to relying on my friend, Mr. Paint Gun, to making everything nice and smooth. So to do it with a brush is a little bit different. I did do the 550 scale Titanic with the brush, and that didn't come out as great. Actually, as bad as this looks, this probably came out better. than the Titanic deck did on a small scale. I used the tester's paint, and the tester is, even when it's dry, it's going to be glossy. So what I'm thinking is I'm probably going to have to do some, maybe like a matte dull coat. The section in the middle, this building, I'm not sure what it's called, but it does have, it's got the life rafts right there. I'm going to have to check to see if that's painted green. If the floor area in that area is green. If it is, I'll go ahead and I'll do that as well. I just want to check first to make sure it's accurate. All right, so I wanted to do a light check, or a light leak check. You can see the green, the deck is pretty good for the light blocking. But the areas inside, you can see I'm going to have to touch up. And I'll probably do that from the inside. Maybe if I give it a quick coat of the silver again, because I had given it a really thin coat of the mirror paint, the chrome. So the decking looks good, but we're still going to have to fix that light leak. So when it's dark, we can see what's supposed to be lit, not everything else. And you know, these lights are bright. Take the box off. You can see at night, those lights are really, really beaming. I'm starting to think I overdid it on the lights, but I'd rather have too much light than not enough. So we're going to darken that. We'll do it from the inside, but when the paint is dry, tomorrow we're going to start doing a detail on the deck. All right, so we got a lot of the detail painted. You can see all the bollards. I put black. And this for the silver, we have the winches, the winch, the come along of the winches. And I ended up doing the top over here, this part green, because that was actually another deck. You guys may be wondering what that yellow is on top of that. This is actually a pile of 3 inner tubes, or rafts, the tube type rafts. Because I was wondering what that was, and the more pictures that I looked at, you could see there's actually 3 of them. And I'll put a picture up that they're stacked up on top of each other. So that was over there. And in the front, we have different things. The only thing I got it left to do is try to find the exact color of the cargo hatches. You can see molded into plastic, there are lines where you can see that looks like the cover or the rectangle on the inside is a different texture. So that could indicate that it's a different color, but I'm not sure. But I want to make sure. I'm going to check just before I paint it. But once those are done, we'll be able to move on. So that's important. So let's get that checked out, and then I'll paint the hatch covers. Okay, so I finished the details on the bow section, the deck anyway. And let me show you guys what I did. I couldn't find any color pictures of the cargo hatches for the ship. I did see some what looked like to be gray. Going by the model, there were 2 triangles that were on top that had different textures. That led me to believe that that was actually the cargo hatch, and the area around it was actually the metal, the part of the ship. So I've decided I would go and I would combine them both. So I did the gray around the metal areas of the cargo hatch, and we left the tops, what I perceive to be the canvas coverings, white. And the last thing that I had done, right over here, I don't know if you can see that, but I put that gold. And if you guys are wondering why that's gold, that's actually the ship's bell. So the ship's bell was located right at the bow. Alan, thanks for that info. My friend Alan had told me that's where they keep the ship's bell, so that's why it's gold. And I had done the hatch covers the way I did. I think it looks pretty good. So we're all set really now to move on. But what I want to do before we move on is we have to take care of that light leak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the walls, because you remember the light was bleeding through there and where the buildings and the hatches are. All right, so it all had a nice opportunity to dry, and all the detailing is done. What I think we can do now is start to work on the portholes on the side. You can see this is going to be nice. So when we light the ship, you can see it's going to make a lot of difference. It looks a lot better that way. There we go. And what I'm going to do is, once we glue this down and permanently attach it to the hull, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some a coat of bright white paint to kind of finish it off. So that's going to look nice. Let me show you guys. And again, there won't be that line of light. So I think that looks pretty good. And again, that little bit of effort is going to be worth it when it gets lit, because that looks a lot better. Yeah, the little flagpole, a little part that goes right there, looks like it's missing. Because I had gotten it was already started. Now you can see it's going to go right there. And this will actually looks like it'll fit really nicely. I think it's going to go like that. There. You guys can see. Just like that. So we're going to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And it's going to look a lot better once everything is all set. So check this out. See, you can see it start to solidify now. Once the clarity starts to leave and it gets a little hazy, you can tell it's starting to cool. And yeah, it's going to be nice and strong. So that was no big deal. So why don't we go ahead and, all right, where's that other piece that's supposed to go there? We can use the Plastruct Bondine. I like this glue. And what we can do is we can take this piece, and you can see there's a little notch right in the back over there. And that little notch is going to go right over there. So we got the front, we got this part on, and when that sets, we'll be able to paint it. Because I still got to do a little bit of, there's a little bit of bleed through. Let me show you guys. I think it was coming from these sections, yeah. Of course, the spot where there's no paint, that's where it was bleeding through. So I'm going to paint that before we permanently glue it to the hull. But all right, this is all set now. Now we're ready to move on to the cranes. See, they're going to go in like that. But I don't know if you guys know this or not, but right at the top of the cranes, they had these two huge spotlights, and I'll put up a picture of what the ship looked like at night. It was actually bright enough to light up the whole front of the ship, on the bridge area and the whole bow section. And I kind of want to, I want to light it, and those are to be lit up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these, and we're going to run it along that, and we're going to have this light up. So it'll be good because the wire is really, really tiny. You can almost just get away with super gluing it, and then when we paint it silver, a little touch of the putty, and we'll be able to light these, because I think this is going to make all the difference. So these really come in handy, and they're just a little tiny little light. Now, if you guys are going to use these are low voltage. I think anywhere from a little over 1 volts to 3 volts. If you're going to use more than that, you have to have a resistor. Otherwise, you'll just burn out the light. And since my setup on this is 9 volts, we're going to have to put a resistor on. And you can see the negative and the positive are labeled. One is black, and the other one is just the color of the copper. But these come in really handy, so this is what we're going to do for the spotlights that are on top of the cranes. All right, so what I'm going to have to do, as you can see, there's a little lip on the bottom, and this is going to go right there. And what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut some of that lip off. Just to, let me show you guys, be able to put the light and the wire that's going to go on it. You guys can see it's going to be like that, and it'll be glued, but I got to take out some of that lip on the bottom so we can run it through the deck. So I'm going to notch it out and get the wire to fit, and I'll show you what it looks like. All right, I just want to make sure you can see that, where that little notch was cut out. That way there the wire, yeah, that's a little bit better. That way there the wire can follow it. All right, so I loosely fit the cranes in, and I don't know if you'll be able to see, the base is notched out a little bit, just enough to pass the wire through. And then the paint will cover it up. So I notched out both cranes, the bases, and now we're ready. Don't forget, these LEDs, by the way, they have to have a resistor because we're using a 9-volt battery. So we're all set now to run the wire for the light up at the top. And I don't know if you can see at the top of the cranes, each side has those 2 spotlights. Okay, so at this point, we're going to be running the wires along the cranes to put the LEDs on top. And it's at this point I think we should go ahead now and secure the bow section to the hull. So let's take the cranes out. And just like that, what I want to do is we're going to put the lights on just to make sure the gaps are going to be closed. You guys can see right there. Pushing it down. Okay, so what I did was I went ahead and I super glued the LED to the crane. And when it's set just enough to handle it, I picked it up and I put more glue. I let it drip down the sides, and then I just kind of put them into the pliers to hold them in place. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see the light. is I don't have to putty it. And if you guys can see, it's sealed up nicely. My hand really cramped up because I held it. I used my hands as clamps on this, and I sat for like 10 minutes. And luckily, there's no gap. But the whole reason I stopped where I was going to paint, because, you know, let's be, you know, realistically, it would have been easier to paint it before putting it on the hull. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bright white, the testers, just to get it to look a lot better. And we'll wait for the creams to dry, and let's get this painted. All right, so they had a chance to dry. So what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to give them a coat of paint and see how they look. And while I'm using the silver paint, I can actually go ahead and do the section where the light was bleeding through. You can see the parts that don't have it. Okay, so they had a chance to dry overnight, and you can see the part with the wire is going to go on the inside. So you're looking at the outside of the ship, you won't see the wire for the light. And these are ready to put into the hull. This one, the wire shows a little bit more, but again, we're only going to see the outside, so it should be okay. And the rigging and everything is going to help distract from the wire on the front. What I think I'm going to do now, let me show you guys, is I was going to put the stickers or the decals on at a later time, but I think I'm going to put them on now onto the hull, only because you figure the cranes and all the stuff that's going to be on the decks. So we'll go ahead, we're going to put the sticker on the back, and we got two of the decals that are going to go on the sides of the bow. So let me show you guys. What the decals look like. Now these are from 1950. Dip in water. These are these are very old. So we're going to put this to the ultimate test. I think the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to put some warm water, and I'm going to put a little bit of dish soap in it, and we'll see if we can get these to work. So what I did was I put some warm water into a bowl, and I put about 3 or 4 drops of dish soap in it, kind of a humectant, and we're going to put that in. Again, these are from 1955, so I'm going to really put it to the test. So let that soak. Now, when it comes to the United States, they have the rigging on these cranes. I've seen a lot of pictures when it's not in use. They have a point that goes from the top to the end, but it doesn't go straight. It kind of bends down close to the this part, and it's actually wrapped. So that's what I want to do with these. So we need the rigging. Wow, so this is actually working faster than I thought it would. Okay, so let's put these aside for now. Wow. These are from 1955, and I think it looks pretty good. Now let's do the other side. Wow. Like I said, they're from 1955, and I think they look pretty good. So, the other one slid right off, so we got to get that back on. So this is the back one. So you can see, again, I think these are pretty good considering they're from 1955. So I'm very pleased with the way that worked. So again, if you have some old decals, put a little bit of warm water and a little bit of dish soap in the bowl, and you won't have any problems putting them on your model. Get a nice soft brush, and we could put some of the micro set on. There we go. All right, so the decals are all set now, so we don't have to worry about that. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, wrap around, and go right there. And then we're going to use super glue to keep it in place. Use a super glue. And just a little drop. All right. I don't know if you can see that. There's not going to be a whole ton of rigging. From what I want to do is I wanted to put pieces of rigging around. You know what? Maybe I'll still do that, but I'll keep it this way. I'll tighten it. And now I'm going to put a drop of super glue over there. Drop of super glue on top just to hold it in place. All right, let's do the same for the other side. You guys are going to be able to see it, but I think I'm going to just do one per side. I think there was actually 2 or 3 on the actual ship, but it's so small. It might not even be noticeable. It might seem like a lot of work, but just to get a little bit of authenticity or accuracy. So I'm going to do the same thing for this side. Okay, so you can see what I did on either side. I only put one on a real ship. There was probably 2 or 3 on either side to secure the cable, but I'm only going to do 1 on either side. So we're going to let that glue set, and we're going to go ahead. We're going to do the other one. All right, and we'll let that dry. Okay, so we had some time for all the glue and all the paint to dry on the cranes. And they're ready to put into the bow section of the ship now. So, I'll put this aside for now. I think we'll go ahead and start with the port side. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to have the section with the light that's going to be facing in. So, we're going to have the finished section facing out, and what we can do is we can fit it into position right now. So let's get these wires a little bit apart. Because remember, we have to put a resistor on. Just a little bit. just a little bit. That's how it's going to be positioned. Show you guys the other side. Because the wire is on the inner part with the LED, we don't see it on the outside. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use super glue on it, or crazy glue. So now we're ready to put the other one in. And again, we're going to put the side with the wire facing inside. And let's get the wires apart a little bit. And this is going to go, we'll angle it this way. All right, let's put this in. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the rigging across so when they dry, they'll be set. So let's get the rigging out. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see the rigging. All right, let's do the other side. All right, I don't know if you guys will be able to see that. We get the rigging going across. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little drop of the super glue to keep it in place. And what we're going to do is there's going to be a piece of cable that's going to go in the middle, tying the top down. You're going to use a little bit of flux. And it's important to have the flux, because what the flux does is it actually gets the solder to stick to the wires. You can see the wire is now soldered in place. Now this is really old solder. Flux. And this is actually for your pipes. So what I'm using is a professional solder and pipes, flux for the pipes. And it's a little more industrial, but I think it works pretty good. And it's cheaper than buying the model stuff. Right, so we got some flux on the end of the resistor. All right, let's get the other resistor. All right, so you can see both of those are soldered. So what we need to do now is we're going to twine them together, just like that. Let's get some flux on there. Let's get some flux on that section too. Just like that. And of course we're going to put the flux on here. Okay. You don't really have to solder them in the same place like I did there, but just to show that that is going to be for the bow lights on the cranes. All right, so now if everything is all wired, soldered, and correctly done, not only should we have hull lights, but we should have lights on the cranes as well. So let's flip the switch. You can see we've got lights on the cranes. And we got lights in the hull. That is so cool. I'm glad that little bit of extra work, it really paid off. It made all the difference. Because looking at the pictures, and Alan, if you're watching, thank you so much for those nighttime pictures of this beautiful ship. He sent me pictures of the ship at night where you can actually see all the lights. So what I think we're going to do now is we're going to glue on the sections that go just behind the one that we put on, and we'll be ready to paint the top. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And that little seam will cover up when we paint it. All right, so you guys can see what it's starting to look like. Starting to look pretty good. All right. What we're going to do now is we're going to put the finishing touches on, and we're going to paint the white part up over there, and we're going to paint this little mast that's in the front because that's white as well. All right, so we got that side done. All right. This is why I like using the spray gun or an aerosol can, because the brush is clumpy and the testers, as soon as it starts to dry, you get those clumps that form, and it gets that kind of globby look. You can see both sides. So I'll give that a little bit of time to set, but let me show you guys. I had to paint that to get rid of the light leak. You can see the light leak is all gone, because the lights coming from inside the hull, they are pretty bright. So now we don't have to worry about the light leak. So in a minute I'll put the lights out and we'll check out what she looks like. Okay, so I trimmed off all the little extra pieces on the rigging. And what I think I'm going to do is, there's a piece of rigging that goes in between the cranes. And I don't know if it goes down to where the rafts are, or to where the winches are, or down to the mast that's at the front, the flagpole. So what I'm going to do is we'll hold off on that, and then when we put the finishing rigging on the whole ship, we'll address that situation. But for now, let me turn it around so you can see the bow section. Looking pretty nice. Let's turn her around. You can see the other side. Again, my paintbrush skills are really not that great. I like it better when I'm able to use the paintbrush. So for the back, because the super glue makes a good seal, so we don't have to putty it. So what I'm thinking, when it comes to doing the stern, I'll paint it before I glue it on, because that's the next section that I'm going to do. But let me go ahead and I'm going to put the lights out, and I'm going to cover the rest of the hull with something so you guys can see just this section. Alright, so you can see the lights on top of the crane. You can see the windows. And the light leak is pretty much taken care of. Let me go ahead and shut the lights off, you guys. Give you a better view of what she's going to look like at night. She's a beauty. And this gives me some ideas for the Titanic model. The next Titanic model I was going to do, I'm thinking of doing the 1/400 scale, the Technics with the lights and the sound. I can put lights up on top of the masts, like we know she has. But this is the United States. You can see. Again, my modeling skills aren't the best. You can see her bow. And do a little flyover. I think the lights really bring it out. I think that was a nice touch. And the LEDs now is so small, it makes it possible. Let me zoom in for you guys to show you the crane. You can see the back of the crane. The rigging that I had done. What I attempted to do. You can see on the other one, you can see the inside. Let me go ahead and I'm going to turn the ship around for you guys. Let's see how bright the inside of the hull is. So let's look at the starboard side. You can see the promenade deck lights. The lights in the hull. And it's a little bit better with the light leak now than it was. I think I'm going to put some, I'm actually going to coat the thread probably with super glue. Either super glue or some black paint. That way there, all that little frizz that you see will be taken care of. You can see this side of the crane. Looks okay. And this one didn't come out as good as the other side. The port side came out a lot better because the wire was very straight when I glued it on. Again, let's do a little flyover of the bow section. And that, my friends, concludes the bow section. She's just about finished. The only thing we're going to have to do, like I said, we're going to have to do the rigging when we do the rigging for the whole ship. The next section that we're going to do is we're going to take care of the stern, the deck on the stern. And I don't know how I'm going to figure out how to paint on the tennis court. So I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do with that. And again, the wires that are inside, it's a little bit messy, but we're going to be able to use them to power the lights for the rest of the top side of the ship. You can see the resistors that are going in to the positive leads for the crane lights. And all in all, she's starting to come along pretty nicely. So my friends, I thank you for watching, and for the next video we'll be doing the stern. Till then, thank you so much, and I thank you for watching.